Everybody loves a story. And stories memorialize things. As you're learning to go through transitions and to recognize the transitions, one of the ways you're going to do them is you're going to memorialize each stage of that transition with a story. Now, I write books. It's my 27th book, and I write nonfiction. But I still like to fill my books with stories because it helps people remember major points about things. And so, when you write a story, it's got to have certain things, it's got to have a point to it. Sometimes they don't seem to. It's got to have a beginning, it's got to build, it's got an end, it's got to have something memorable that's a crescendo in that story. And then you got a way to let down. And sometimes you go right to the very end with a big bang and you stop, and that's also good. But whatever, the story is most important to the audience. And so I'm going to teach you to write stories that are 6 words long. So that's pretty easy, right? Anybody can write a 6-word story, and I'm going to teach you how to do that. But I want to tell you a little bit about stories first. So in my writing and when I'm coaching people, because I used to coach authors all the time, so I would say to them, the 4 most important words in the English language are tell them a story. Tell them a story. And it's really true. I used to think they were the 4 most important, but there are 4 that are even more important, and it's listen to their stories. Because when you can get people telling you their stories, oh my gosh, you can learn so much. Now, we live in Ocean City, New Jersey. We had a great boardwalk, and I go up there sometimes for walks, and I'll sit down next to people on benches, and I got my white cane, and I'm walking up there, and I'll sit down, and there's lots of people on lots of benches, and sometimes I'll say to the person next to me, hey, tell me your story. I want to listen. And some people are good at it, some people aren't. So when we learn to tell people, when we learn to say to ourselves, I'm going to listen to stories, listen to their stories, those 4 words, you have to find some way to get them to tell you their story. Now, I'm going to tell you a quick story about this guy named Larry Smith, who was the one that taught me about 6-word stories. And Larry Smith from Philadelphia, and when he was younger, he used to come down to the boardwalk in Atlantic City all the time. And his grandfather was an immigrant from Russia. And so he realized one time he didn't know much about his grandfather, and said to his grandfather, would you tell me your story? I want to know more about you. And his grandfather said, well, what does an ordinary man like me have to say that what people would want to listen to? So what Larry did was, in order to get people to tell them his stories, starting with his grandfather, he got a video camera. This is back when video cameras were new. And he went to his grandfather and he said, listen, I got to practice with this video camera. Would you please tell me your talk and I'll record you? And his grandfather said, sure. And 2.5 later, when his grandfather finally stopped, Larry realized that people have these stories inside them. And if you can get them out, you can learn so much about them. Folks, you can help people transition into this next stage and grow with them if you learn to get them to tell your stories. So Larry did this thing. He had this online magazine, and he decided he heard about Ernest Hemingway. And Ernest Hemingway, the famous author, he was bet one time in a bar, which could have been any time in Ernest Hemingway's life from what we understand, and that he couldn't write a novel in 6 words. Took him a few minutes to do it, and he came up with for sale, baby shoes, never used. And it's a fantastic 6-word story. It conjures up so much, and it says so much. So Larry Smith had a website, and he started inviting people to write these stories. He got 10,000 6-word stories. I chose one of them to put up here for you just to show you how profound they can be. And it's life's GPS. Keep saying, recalculate, recalculate. So what happens is people distill things down into 6 words. And Larry thought that it was going to stifle creativity when he first started doing this. But it turns out when you limit people to 6 words, it frees them up so much. They don't have to start someplace, end some, they just kind of come up with 6 words to describe how they're feeling or something that happened or where they are right now. And these 6 words, you put them into this 6-word story, and it's a starting point. It's not an ending point. You don't want to end there. But people go crazy for them. And I'm going to be sharing with you a website address where you can send me your 6-word stories. This is so important. Now, here's the thing. Why are we doing this? Because I want to help you transition. I want you to see what just happened to you. And this is not going to be just for COVID. This is going to be for other disruptions that you face. 6-word stories work for any disruption. I got 7 words, but anyway, it's okay. Because it's funny, since I started doing this, I started thinking to myself, how many words was that? But so they work for any kind of disruption because it helps you understand where you were before, where you were during, and what you got to do now. And it's writing this future story that's going to be the toughest, but it's going to give you a guide to where you want to go. So I'm going to share with you my 3 6-word stories that I wrote about my COVID experience, okay? So here comes the first one. Ready? Here it is. Life's great. What could go wrong? What could go wrong? That's how I was feeling, in late February when I was out in California with my wife. We were visiting my friend John Williams at his winery, and I'm thinking, life's great. What could go wrong? We had heard things were starting to happen. Didn't realize it was going to happen. Streamline. Focus on what's most important. That's because during COVID, I had to get rid of stuff. I had to change, and I had to focus on what's most important in order to get through this. I had to streamline things. I know you did the same thing too. Listen, your story might be different. That was my 6-word story. And then here's my 6-word story for post-COVID. The better is yet to come. The better is yet to come. And so, folks, you've heard the expression, the best is yet to come. Some people don't believe that. So I say, okay, let's make it better. And here's my plan for after COVID. I can't make every day the best that it's ever been, but you know what I can do? I can work hard to make every day that's better than the next one. So all I've got to do in my post-COVID travels is just do a little better each day. Just find one thing in my life, move it forward a little bit. Folks, that's what I want you to do. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to write 3 6-word stories. I'm going to ask you to write a 6-word story that describes how you were feeling before COVID hit. I'm going to ask you to write a 6-word story that describes how you got through this thing. And I'm going to ask you to write a 6-word story for what you're going to do on the other side of this. And by the way, this isn't just for COVID. This is for any disruption in your life where you have to make a transition. Because once you write your 6-word stories, your before, during, and after, you're able to recognize the transitions. And guess what can happen then, folks, is you know that you have to shift gears. You know that things are about to change. Don't wait till you're halfway down the road past the transition and then try to shift gears. Everybody else is going to be in front of you. Remember, this is about sustainable personal success. And in sustainable personal success, the better is yet to come.